Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicoletta and I am a weird sister. If you have a weird sister, that's great. I'm happy to be another one. Or if you're in need of a weird sister and you're in need of support, I'm here to help you. Um, Always here to help. So yeah, I am a weird sister. Thank you for coming to my channel. Today's topic is going to be women's health, which is something that is near and dear to my heart because obviously I myself am a woman, and obviously it's something that's, important to me for those reasons, and just because in general it's something that I feel like we should be talking about more of. 72% of women feel that they've been gaslit when they bring something up to their provider. I'm going to link all of these stats I'm going to give you below in my description. 29% even reported having a longer wait time when they went to the ER for chest pain between the ages of 18 to 55. They were either given proper treatment or they weren't given proper treatment, and then they were sent home, depending on not only being a woman, but also their color and sometimes their sexual orientation also takes effect into this as well. Another thing to note as I pull up my study here is that 15% reported that a provider did not believe that they were telling the truth. This is something I've honestly experienced more often than not. 19% say their doctor assumes something about them without asking. That can be pretty true if you are of a certain ethnicity or of a certain sexual orientation and it's obvious. They'll just assume something about you, and not only will they not believe you and blame you for your problem, they just will treat you like absolute dog shit and send you home. And then you're left trying to figure out what you need to do with WebMD and Google searching. 13% say that a provider suggested they were personally to blame for their health problem. I often see this with obesity. I've been considered obese myself, and if you look at my videos, I'm recently losing weight, but even when I was at my heaviest, I was told I was to blame for my problem and given no way to really fix it. And a higher share of women than men, 38% as opposed to 32%, report having had at least one of these negative experiences with a healthcare provider. That is from kff.org. I'm going to link it below. Now, I've had my own share of experiences, which I will share a couple with you. One started when I was 13 years old. So right around that time when I said in my prior video that I was starting to look into having my own art business in the future because I was being taunted about my last name, and I said, well, screw you guys, I'm going to start my own art business when I turn 18. That same time when I was 13, I had really, really bad migraines and really, really bad headaches where I was having to call out sometimes 2 weeks at a time from school, which was just awful. Because I would get teased for that, and I would have to deal with all kind of trouble with that, and it just was not good. It would affect my grades, even though I would collect my homework. It was just terrible. And it came to the point where we had to start doing MRIs. And after looking at everything, and my mom being an advocate for me, which my mom is my hero with health. My mom is probably one of the best people that I could ever think of if you have a health problem. My mom is probably one of the best people out there for it. She is an absolute tiger, an absolute bulldog, and I love her for that. But she had to fight as a woman for me because I couldn't fight for myself at 13, 14 years old. And they discovered that I had a 3x5 cyst in the back of my head. And so with that, we then had to figure out what was going to go on with that. Now, mind you, for a year and a half, 2 years, they had told me nothing was wrong with me. Everything was fine. In fact, they even blamed it on my period. And my mom was like, no, I know my kid, and that's not it. And I have often seen other stories like this. It turns out that I had something called hydrocephalus because I have a subarachnoid cyst in the back of my brain. And by the time I was 17 and I was in honors courses and preparing for college, this cyst decided it wanted to move. And I started having issues where I was not only having migraines and headaches, but I was just flat out blacking out at school. You've seen those clips in the Harry Potter movies where he's, sitting in the train car and then he blacks out. That's pretty much what it was like for me my entire senior through some of my junior year prior. I would just be down and then I would be back up. and there would be people concerned about me, and I had no idea why. And so this became quite the problem. But through all of it, I was still maintaining a decent GPA in school, and I was doing like 3.0 and above. And I was doing academic decathlon, I was on speech and debate, I was VP of art club, I had all kind of crazy shit I was doing that shaped my future today. But my mind, my brain, and everything was just like attacking me with this cyst. And I couldn't find any medical professional that was going to take me seriously. And without my mom, no one would have taken me seriously. And my mom has been a case manager, she's been a reviewer, she's been a nurse for 30 plus years. I am testament to that. My mom used to have to carry me to her classes at night school for nursing. So I am living proof of my mom's nursing degree. And that's pretty much it. So they would see me and they would go, oh, well, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing. We can try and see if we can put her on this pill or that pill or the other pill. And I didn't want to be on 10 million different pills at 17 years old. I wanted to just figure out how can we fix this. Well, it got so bad by February of 2010 that I was pretty much a month off of school and I couldn't function and I was blacking out and I had really bad migraines and it became a serious problem. So by end of February, early March, I was admitted because they had said that the cyst was trying to move. That's when they discovered the cyst was trying to move. And they had said that I needed to have emergency brain surgery. Now, how did we get to this point when I was 17 years old? By people just ignoring me, not listening to me, and not listening to my mom, and my mom having to fight and fight and fight. And this is relatively common. Now, I often think, had I been a star football athlete with a whole career ahead of him and 15 different scouts in the stands, my world would have probably been much different, right? It had nothing to do with my socioeconomic status. It had nothing to do with my color of my skin. It had everything to do with the fact that I was a blonde teenage female and no one would take me seriously. And so early March, I had to have emergency brain surgery, which was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. But it was the only way that they could cure what I had. And they discovered that I had hydrocephalus, and I have hydrocephalus. So if you don't know what hydrocephalus is, it's relatively common, but it's not nearly as talked about as it should be. And it pretty much means that you have an issue with your cerebrospinal fluid in your body and your ability to be able to have your brain control that without it expanding and causing issues. Think like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland and how her head exploded or gets larger. It's kind of like that. And she's like, oh, my head, and her head's expanding and it, kind of looks like it's going to explode, all that. That's kind of what hydrocephalus, that is literally what hydrocephalus is. So the only way they can cure this, the only way they can make this better is they put something in called a VP shunt. And I have a VP shunt right here on the side of my head. You can't see it under all this layer of blonde. But I have this, and I had to place this in. And what that does is it constantly keeps draining the cyst or the cerebrospinal fluid, so that way you don't have that problem, and you don't have an excess of cerebrospinal fluid in your body and in your brain. This can affect your concentration, this can affect your memory, this can affect fatigue, this can affect, 15 million different things, which I can link below if you're interested. And we're going to talk about it later this year as well. But it took me then a month and change to be able to recover. I then, after I had my surgery, I was put on a bunch of different painkillers, and they weren't paying attention to the dosages of those painkillers. With that, I ended up having a near-death experience due to an overdose of drugs that they were giving me. We had come home from the hospital. I was finally cleared. I was discharged, everything. My mom made me buttered noodles to be able to take some of my pills. I took the pills and I took the noodles and whatever to, get better. And then I just went down again. And I went through an entire situation where I was just out, my pressure was dropping, I was slowly becoming no more in this life. I had to be rushed out of my parents' home and, taken to the hospital, back to the hospital that has been saying that they didn't believe me, had to have emergency brain surgery, and all this stuff. Back to that place. Okay. So I go back to that place. Okay. And I coded, and they were about to go into the waiting room and tell my mom that, I was about to be no more or was no more. And I had a whole near death experience in the process. I finally come back, and I don't really want to share my near death experience. It's very personal to me, and I've only shared it with certain people. But I had that experience. I come back, the nurse says to me, she's trying to put an IV in my arm. She can't put an IV in my arm. She said that my veins were corpse-like. Okay? I went from honor student, doing great, getting ready to go to college, all this stuff, and then not being believed about what I had, rushed to have brain surgery, and now my veins are corpse-like. Okay? And she tried both arms. By the time her and 2 other nurses were done trying to get an IV in my arms, I looked like a heroin addict. I had so many damn bruises up and down this arm and then up and down this arm because they could not find a way to get an IV in me. And then they finally did. They realized I needed to drink water and I needed to drink something. So I started to drink. My pupils were still heavily dilated from what I had dealt with. Okay, I had like pin-sized pupils, and I looked like I was dead because technically I was. And I started to drink. I started to feel like I was getting myself back. I started to remember who I was, and then I was finally able. They were finally able to put an IV in my arm, and that was pretty much it. And all of this happened because I was not believed. And what scares me also is I wasn't the only one that had this experience. There was another girl in my high school that had a similar experience and had a similar condition, and no one believed her. And in fact, all of her friends had made fun of her. And it was just horrible to see that, here we are, everything ahead of us, everything going great as it should be. And then due to our health, we can't be doing what we need to be doing. And due to the way that we look, we can't get the treatment we need. And what we can't get the treatment we need. I nearly died. Okay? I nearly died because I wasn't believed. And then finally, after dealing with that whole experience and relearning how to walk and relearning how to function every day, I was able to go home by mid-May. That following month in June, I played Carnegie Hall with my orchestra because I was looking to double major, double minor in music and art, and I play violin. I haven't touched my violin in quite some time since, for reasons relating to this and just for other reasons. But we went and we played Carnegie Hall. Now, having dealt with this experience, having gone through everything I went through for 5 years, I was never believed about a neurological condition, and I was treated like I didn't know what I was talking about. My mom, who was a qualified professional, qualified nurse, was treated like she didn't know what she was talking about because she is also a woman. So it came down to life or death for me to be taken seriously. And that is why this is really near and dear to my heart, because I have lived this, I have dealt with it, and I have seen what it means when you're not taken seriously. It is a problem in this country. And it is a problem, honestly, everywhere, that women are treated like we don't know what we're talking about, that we don't know what we're facing. And the only way to fix it is to figure out how we can get over arrogance of those we are facing. And it doesn't matter how many second opinions you get. It doesn't matter if you have a female doctor. It doesn't seem to matter if you even have every study printed out about what you think you might have. We're not taken seriously. A second experience I had was years later when I was in my 20s. I was about 25, 26, and I was living alone in my apartment, and I started to feel really, really sick. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and my whole back was killing me. It felt like someone had stabbed me multiple times. And I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't function. And so I called my mom. My mom only lived a short minute away from me. She lived 10, 15 minutes away from me. She took me to the ER. They told me I had menstrual cramps. They told me, and they looked my mother right in the face, the woman who didn't leave my side when I had my brain surgery, the woman who literally fought a resident, verbally, not physically, who literally fought everybody for me to be alive. They told this woman that with my symptoms of being stabbed, feeling like I was being stabbed in the back and not being able to breathe, that I had menstrual cramps. That's what they told her. That's what they told me. And we had to wait 2 hours before we were seen. While other people who didn't seemingly have, near as much injury or pain as I did, got treated first. And by the time we got there, they told me it was menstrual cramps. And I said, no, it's not. And I said, I'm not even anywhere in that point of my cycle. I said, that can't possibly be it. And she said, that can't possibly be it. And my mom said, did you run this? Did you run that? Did you run the blood tests? And they said, well, no, we didn't run any blood tests. We didn't run those tests. And she says, you're going to run them now. And they said, we would like to have these tests run. And the doctor said to her, they said, well, who are you to make that call? And she said, I'm her mother, and you're going to run those tests. And we're going to stay here all night until you run those tests. And so they went and they got a phlebotomist, and they drew my blood. And sure enough, I had high counts of creatine in my system, and my kidneys were having issues. They then discovered that I had an intolerance to gluten, which had started at that point, and that I was actually really sick because my body had just chemically switched to not liking gluten. We were skeptical about this because a couple years prior, I went and I had a Mai Tai, and I had a slice of pineapple on my drink, and the pineapple made me sick and it put me into anaphylactic shock. I took a ton of Benadryl, and then, it went away. We were able to catch it really quickly before I needed to get anything like an EpiPen, because my mom thought quickly and we were able to handle it. My mom has saved my life multiple times. I trust my mom over any male doctor. But I had found, while I was sitting there waiting and reading and trying to figure things out, that bromelain is a chemical that is in both pineapple and gluten. Do you know that? I know that. I can link it below. And I figured I might have an intolerance to bromelain, to this bromelain thing. Oh, no. That's, we could see, they then said to me, they said, is there any chance you could be pregnant? I said, no, I live alone in my apartment. I don't see anybody, no. I was very motivated by my career at the time. My craziest thing was I would go home and I would go to sleep and watch Netflix. That was it. And so they said, well, are you sure? And I said, my blood tests show that I'm high in, like, creatinine and all this stuff, and that it could be my kidneys. And I was literally watching them discriminate me and not believe me. And I legitimately, again, had an issue. And I started to really get, concerned and anxious about it, because it was like my brain surgery all over again. And that resulted in a life or death situation. So now here we are again, right? And I see this happen now twice, where I have issues where I am really genuinely sick, really genuinely facing an issue, and I'm told, no, 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 it's all in your head. You don't feel that way. Yeah, I fucking do. And we literally had run blood tests that showed it, that proved it. So when I tell you 72% feel gaslit, 29% had to have a longer wait time for chest pain, and then all the other stats that I rambled on about earlier, it's true. It's very true. Do you know that there also has been times that I've seen women have issues with fertility because of something else? There's issues where they'll have some kind of abdominal issue and they won't get it taken care of. And then they come to find that, they need surgery, they need this, that, or the other thing, and it doesn't get taken care of. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then they say, oh, well, now you can't have children, you're too fat. And it turned out that they actually had a tumor, that they had a cyst, that they had a problem that was very legitimate. They get that removed, their hormones balance, they're able to have children. But initially they were told they were too fat. That was the diagnosis. Eat an apple, you're too fat. Between seeing those kind of things and the two very serious experiences I've had, and those are just two that are most notable for like a 20-minute video. I've had several others. This is a concurrent issue in our country. And the only way that we can continue to fight this, that we can continue to get through it, is to speak out about it and to not be silenced. On that ER visit where they discovered that I had an issue with my kidneys, and then we had discovered that it was due to a gluten bromelain allergy, I then, made note of how the healthcare system treats women and will treat me going forward. My mom was not willing to accept the treatment that I was given at that time. And she actually wrote the healthcare administrator of the hospital. And the healthcare administrator wrote me back and, about my mother's concerns with the hospital and my treatment. And I still have the letter somewhere. But it got to that level. From that point on in that hospital, if I were to go in with so much as a cold, there seemed to be something in the system where they knew who I was and I didn't have to wait as long. Because my mom spoke up. My mom spoke out about what was going on with me. And she refused to give up. And it's sad that it has to get to that point. Had I said the same things and I were a man or, any kind of different, I'd have probably gotten better treatment. But because I'm blonde and I'm female, I didn't get that treatment. I got told that I didn't know what I was talking about. And, it has to be something. They always want to blame your menstrual cycle. And that's something I always find fascinating is Why are we so fascinated with women's menstrual cycles, but so quick to blame them when they have a health concern? Why is everybody so fascinated with wanting to be able to control what we do with our bodies, but then not listening to us when we have an issue with those bodies? Why is it that, like, in my lifetime, in my lived experience as a millennial woman, I have had two very serious experiences, and in both times, I didn't feel like I could ever trust a medical professional again. You know, to this day, I will take advice from Google or looking and reading and figuring things out myself quicker than I will going into a hospital unless I have a situation where I feel like I need immediate attention. That's where I'm at with it. And I'm not alone. I will quicker reach out to my family and friends and do a search online than I will go into a hospital or consult a medical professional because of the experiences I've had. And I know I'm not alone with that. It's terrifying to think that in the world of modern technology, where we have all these advances, all these wonderful things, everything we could possibly think of and then some, and all of these tests and abilities to be able to make the world a greater and better place, that we can't ever think that women have issues with themselves and that we need to maybe apply some of that technology to them. You know, it's terrifying to me to think that. And knowing that this is where we stand. We are in the same spot almost 100 years ago in 1926 and 2026 with women's health and being believed for our issues. An entire century has passed and we are still treated this way. An entire century has passed and we're still not believed and we're gaslit and told we don't have these things. And it takes a life or death situation for us to be believed, for us to be understood, for us to be taken seriously. But then there's people that come out with all these wonderful advancements in other technology, and we don't get to see it. We don't get to see the advancements that we need for our health unless someone feels like we might die. That's the only way. It sucks. It's terrible. It needs to change. And I'm not the person to tell you how to change it, but I am the person to tell you that I'm here with you during it and that I've had my own experiences. And it's hard to believe that we're not going to ever see the kind of technology that we need to see unless we have a life or death situation. You know, when I was also, and I'm going to go back to being a funeral arranger. When I was a funeral arranger, I had a couple cases where she wasn't believed. And I was helping her family pick out pine or oak. And this happened more than once. And you know, it happened with that person being at the same hospital that I had had my brain surgery at. It had happened the second time with the same hospital I had my brain surgery at. Both times. And it's hard to believe that in today's day and age, this is where we're at. That we still don't believe when a woman says she's hurting, when a woman says she's in pain, when a woman says she needs certain tests for her health, when she says she needs some of the modern technology that we need to, you know, consider that testing for her, or look into maybe putting her in that clinical trial or study, or trying that new medication. I think this might work. You know, we're told we're crazy. And again, I don't know how to fix that, but I'm here with you on it. I will tell you that I'm going to link the studies and things I have found below, and I'm going to link some resources as well. But just know that you're not crazy if you feel like you have an issue. And if you feel like you have an issue, fight for it. Fight for it. Don't let anybody tell you to. It's your health. It's your health. Fight for it. It's important. Don't ever let anyone tell you as a woman that you don't have something, that it's all in your head, that you're crazy, that it doesn't matter, that you just have cramps. No, you're just hormonal. No. And maybe you might be, and it's an imbalance that they need to look into. Consider that. But don't ever let people tell you that you don't know what you're talking about. You are living in your body. You are there every day, every minute, every second, every millisecond, every year. You are in your body. You know your body the best. Don't let them tell you you're crazy. So with that, I'm going to link some studies below. Thanks for watching my channel. Stay weird.